Hello and welcome to day 12 of the R Advent Calendar 2019. For today's lesson, we are going to subset data by rows. Alright, so we're going to return back to the data that we read in, I believe, on day 9. Exactly, I actually read it in on day 8. We exported on day 9, so it's been a few days. If unlike me, you have closed out R in the meantime, in the past 4 days, you're going to want to make sure to open it back up. Hopefully you have everything saved in a script like we have here. Make sure to set your working directory to the folder where you have all your files, and make sure to read in the sl.dat file with the read.csv command as we talked about on day 8. And so when you do that, as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and clear out my environment, and I'm going to read it back in. You should see an environment that looks something like this, where you just have the sl.dat object, which is the sleigh data. All right. Let's get the section set up for today. And so the instructions today say we're going to try to pull out data for different types of sleighs and make new vectors based on those. All right, so in this case it says we're going to organize the green and the red sleighs into separate vectors. And we're going to do that based on the color column. Now in this case, we didn't talk about it too much, but if we just look at the color column, it's all just ones and zeros. And I believe in the instructions for day 8, it sort of described the data set a little bit, and it said what these were. We can see here today that color 0 corresponds to a red sleigh, and color 1 corresponds to a green sleigh. And so to subset it, we're going to use this command subset. As always, you can check out the help for that one. And in this case, we're going to subset. The first argument, x, is the data we want to operate on. So in this case, it's sl.dat. And then we're going to give it a logical expression based on what to keep. And in this case, we're going to, for the red, we're going to say keep everything where the color is absolutely equal to 0. That's a double equal sign, equals, equals. And then green is going to be subset sl.dat where color is equal to 1. I like to have spaces here, that's why I'm adding them in. You don't have to, I just like it for readability. So let's just run those 2 lines quickly and see what happens. We can see now we have 2 new objects in our environment, red and green. Red has 19 observations, in other words there are 19 red sleds, and green has 14 observations. So there are 14 green sleds. It points out in the notes about the double equals, like I already mentioned. You can also subset rows from the subsets. Alright, so if we want red sleighs that weigh more than 2 grams, that's pretty light. These are very light sleighs, but whatever. You can see we're going to call subset again. In this case, the object is going to be the red object, the first, which was actually a subset itself. And we're going to say everywhere the weight is over 2. And in this case, they're all over 2 grams. Let's look at red real quick. Let me look at the weights. Red weight. Yeah, they're all over 2. Okay. Now, let's say we wanted to actually subset it, and we set that something like 4. Now, if we look in our environment, we can see there are only 4 sleighs, red sleighs that are more than 4 grams, I guess, or whatever the unit is. Sorry about that. All right, and so it says FYI, the function filter from the package dplyr, which we installed the other day, is essentially the same thing as the function subset. Let's just show that quickly. Again, you're going to make sure to load the dplyr library. If you closed out R, you will definitely need to reload it. Let's just put it here. And so let's see what happens if we do dply, or sorry, excuse me, if we do filter, and we're going to filter sl.dat. It's actually funny, I don't use filter this way too often. Okay, so if we just say filter sl.dat where the color equals 0, we see a bunch of stuff get printed out to the console, and these are all those rows where the color was equal to 0. Now, since we didn't assign it to an object, it just prints to the console and evaporates. But if we wanted to save it, we could call it dplyr.red, and we run that, and now we get this object, which is effectively the same thing as using subset. We might talk later about why you would use filter versus subset. I'm breaking my code as I talk. But regardless, these functions are very, very similar to each other. Okay, if you have any other questions, pop them in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow for day 13.